Welcome to worship for the Unitarian Universalist community of Charlotte. I'm Eve Stevens.
And I'm Jay Leach, and we are the ministers of this congregation.
In any other year, on the Sunday after Labor Day, our children and youth would be in their classes, you'd be in our sanctuary pews, and we would be standing together before you, ready, anxious even, to lead a new series of services.
But it being this year, this in so many ways terrible, horrible, no good, very bad year, our children and youth are in virtual classes, you are in your homes, and we are safely distanced, seated in our sanctuary.
And yet one thing remains the same. We're excited, anxious even to lead another year of services.
Today, we begin an exploration around the theme, becoming the community we want to be. Barriers, boundaries, and belonging.
Becoming the community we want to be. Barriers, boundaries, belonging.
Today, joined by our accompanist, Jessica Borges, who you've heard already.
By our director of music, John Herrick, who you will hear.
And by our virtual adult choir, who you will marvel both to see and hear. We're delighted to be leading this service together.
And we're delighted that you are here with us, whether you're a visitor finding us for the first time or a member who for decades sat in the pews that now stretch out empty before us.
You are most certainly not alone in watching this service. Many of us are doing so right now as well.
In fact, during the singing of our opening song, you may wish to go to our public Facebook page and post real-time greetings to one another.
Welcome.
Welcome.
We are so glad to be together again.
Good morning. We're the Visco family. I'm Rebecca.
I'm Sam.
I'm Adam.
And I'm Evan. We light this chalice, symbol of our liberating faith, in celebration of the start of a new congregational year.
This flame calls us back, as it has so many times before, to the imagination, courage, and tenacity at the heart of this community.
This new year before us is an invitation to stretch in mind and in spirit
Toward the better world that together we dream is possible.
In an early morning conversation this past week, our now ninth grader perched on a stool at our kitchen island over a blueberry muffin and a mug with more milk than coffee, plied me with one of their class assignments, suspecting that I'd take the bait, which, of course, I did. After all, they are taking civics. And how could I resist the opportunity to discuss the content of that class? So they produced a portion of the Declaration of Independence, some lines they were supposed to consider carefully before translating them into their own words. Prudence indeed will dictate, it began, that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes. And accordingly, it continues, all experience hath shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. In other words, don't throw out the whole system just because there's some aspects of it that aren't to your liking. And admits our defining document, we're actually more inclined to put up with problematic things than to go to all the effort to create a whole new system. But it continued with wise counsel and with a warning. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under utter despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. Our founding signatories are wrestling with a critical question, not just of civics, government, political organization. It's a fundamental question in all communities. How do we know when the time has come to alter our course radically, to go in a new direction, to concede that the way things have been and the way things are no longer suffice? Not, says the Declaration, not for light and transient causes should we abolish the forms to which we are accustomed. But when and how do we know that it is time for a change, for a substantive, transformative change? Venture back far enough into our religious history, our history as Universalists and as Unitarians, and you'll find our forebears wrestling with that very same fundamental question. Those more impassioned Universalists, so adamantly convinced that a loving God would never, could never damn a single soul. Those more intellectually minded Unitarians, so resolutely convinced that the ways of God aligned with truth as they otherwise knew it, neither wishing to break from the Christian tradition that birthed and nurtured them. And for a while they made it work, stayed the course, endured the contradictions, maintained as much as possible the ways things had been. So too, in a certain way, for a few dozen mid-20th century charlatans, our religiously curious congregational forerunners, who'd heard of Unitarianism, but had never actually experienced it, there not being a single Unitarian congregation in the entire state of North Carolina. Do we break with all we've ever known? Do we set ourselves on a whole new course, commit ourselves to create a completely different kind of spiritual community than we'd ever actually experienced? From the long vantage of history, we now know what happened. Universalists did break with their tradition and form a whole new way of being religious. Unitarians did break with their tradition and form a whole new way of being religious. Then both repeatedly broke with their own traditions, rethinking and radically remaking themselves, moving ever further away from their founding views. When those separate paths no longer seemed sustainable, they merged to form Unitarian Universalism, yet a whole new way of engaging with the world religiously. And since becoming Unitarian Universalists some 6 decades ago, we've continued changing rather dramatically from that initial form. So too, here in Charlotte, the founders of this congregation decided to go all in on our liberating faith. Brave souls believing that they had it in them to form in faith something never before seen here. Trusting their vision, believing in one another, coming together to form the Unitarian Church of Charlotte in the late 1940s. From a school to a movie theater to a small East Boulevard home, and then way out to the edge of town where we have not ever stayed the same. This is in our DNA as a community and as a larger religion. We are the descendant of those whose faith outweighed their fear, and who, when the call came to create a new way, created a new way. While other religions may root themselves so deeply in tradition, where Unitarianism, Universalism, and Unitarian Universalism nationally and locally are concerned, the reality is, despite what some may imagine, it has never actually been the way it has always been. Why do we exist as a liberating faith? That answer has changed over time. Why do we exist as a congregation? That answer, too, has changed over time. The grand 19th century poet James Russell Lowell, son of a Unitarian minister, challenged us all to be mindful. New occasions teach new duties. Time makes ancient truth uncouth. They must upward still and onward. Who would keep abreast of truth? A new and very challenging self-assessment of where we now are as a religious movement, offered in a publication just released by our association entitled Widening the Circle of Concern, names the perils both of forgetting the past and of clinging to the past. We need, it urges, we need to learn the lessons of history and acknowledge that these are new times. These are new times. These are most certainly new times. So who are we now?
In 2017, in the wake of an outcry highlighting the institutional racism embedded in the hiring practices of our Unitarian Universalist Association, the association's Board of Trustees appointed a commission on institutional change. The commission was charged with, quote, supporting long-term cultural and institutional change that redeems the essential promise and ideals of Unitarian Universalism. The report summarizing the work and findings of the commission was released this June, saying in order to redeem, reclaim, recover the essential promise of our faith, we must identify the aspects of our Unitarian Universalist culture that must be dismantled to transform us into a faith for our times. This is a question asked by past leaders of our larger faith for generations. What is required of us in order to become a faith for our present times? The leaders of our faith, the leaders of the present moment, have answered that what is required of us is a reckoning with Unitarian Universalist history, how we've represented that history, and with our culture as a faith. For a long time, Unitarian Universalists have imagined that we, the people within this circle of faith, are not racist, not sexist. We are the proponents of justice, of equity, we care for the earth. For a long time, we carefully constructed a wall between ourselves and those people out there who are racist, who are sexist, who do not care responsibly for the earth. Now we're being called as a people of faith to notice the wall we've built between our imagined innocence and the complicity of others. Over the past few years, more and more, we've heard leaders of Unitarian Universalism chipping away at this self-constructed divide until little by little, we've found ourselves blinking in disbelief in the glaring light of our recent jarring conclusion. We, the open-minded, the socially conscious, we too are steeped in a culture of white supremacy. We too, as a people of faith, are constrained by the standards of patriarchy. We too have confined our language and our understanding to a gender binary. We too are complicit in the systemic injustices that turn the wheels of our everyday life. The Unitarian Universalism of the present moment calls our faithful to practice humility, to dismantle piece by piece the intricate armor so many of us were granted as a birthright, the insulation of denial, the shield of defensiveness, the safety of silence, the armor that protects those with wealth, those who are white, providing the means for comfort and complacency and complicity. The armor that stifles and restrains our ability to grow and change, to transform. The Unitarian Universalism of the present moment calls us to practice humility, to take down the walls we've built and the armor we wear, to dismantle these barriers to living the essential promise, the shared ideals of our faith. A few years ago, the people of this congregation began our own reckoning, a time of deep collective soul searching as a community. Leaders of this congregation took stock of, among other things, the vast income disparity in Charlotte, the crisis of too little affordable housing, a deeply segregated education system, police brutality, and posed the questions the people of this congregation have posed generation by generation. What is asked of us to live our faith with integrity and heart? What is asked of us to be a faith for our times? Out of the struggle to answer these questions came our current congregational vision, a 25-year commitment to spiritual, societal, and environmental transformation in the larger community, in our congregation, and in the personal lives of children, youth, and adults. As a congregation, we've begun to recognize that we are not exempt from the practice of white supremacy or patriarchy. We've begun to peel away our own armor of denial, defensiveness, and silence, removing piece by piece the barriers to our individual and collective transformation. Challenged by our liberating faith in the here and now, we are a congregation exploring the boundaries of our comfort zone. We are a spiritual community turning our attention toward the voices and experience of those most marginalized by our society. We are beginning to recognize the ways in which our spiritual lives intersect and overlap with the work of justice. We are a people of faith discovering what it looks like to invest our time, energy, and trust, following the lead of those most affected by the systemic injustices we seek to dismantle. The insights and commitments of those who came before brought us to this threshold in time, our opportunity to live our faith with integrity, with heart. And when these present lessons in humility are most painful, when the challenge to transform our way of thinking and living feels most daunting, we can rest in the assurance our faith provides that the struggle is worth it. Little by little, we are a congregation, we are a faith, pushing beyond the confines of a too limiting world in search of a more life-giving existence for those who will follow.
While a global pandemic has hidden most of us behind masks, it has simultaneously pulled back the veil on deep-rooted systems of economic and environmental injustice, and on the woeful inadequacies of our healthcare system. There's now no place left to hide from stark realities crying out for systemic change. While the most privileged ones of us were able to sequester ourselves safely away in our homes, inoculating ourselves against exposure to danger, yet another Black man was murdered in broad daylight on a city street by the police. And another, and then another, and another after that. And then many of us took to the streets to express our outrage in loud, persistent, insistent, disruptive protests, uprising, riots. The fury on full display, the rage for some let loose. The embers are still simmering. The fury and rage have not, despite what some may have hoped, just gone away. Gulf skies darken with threatening storms in rapid sequence, one after another. Western skies darken with terrifying fires rampaging through forests and towns. In the grim, terrifying light of both, we see more clearly than ever the perilous state of our planet. An increasingly unhinged president, bloated by hubris, devoid of both conscience and compassion, sows ever deeper seeds of deceit and division. While the oldest ever of the old guards hews to a careful cautious center, leaving many resigned yet again to do what is more necessary than hopeful. And nearer to where we live, the fragile framework of public education, the failing effort to create enough affordable housing, the lack of will to temper the police and their attacks on those in our streets, the fatal curse of being born in the wrong zip code, all serve to compound injustices and oppressions now laid bare in our nation. This is our world now. This is our unmistakable, unavoidable reality. None of us should have to face such a world alone, especially because we each carry our own personal burdens in addition to these societal strains. None of us should face such a world alone. None of us can face such a world alone, much less hope to put so much as a single finger in the dike to stem the raging tide. The untenable myth of hyper-individualism, so much a part of our larger culture, even more a part of Unitarian Universalism's culture, has now been exposed fully for the lie that it has always been. We need one another. We need a community. We need a place where we can be both challenged and nurtured, transformed and taken into the depths of spiritual meaning, urged to be both courageous and involved. We need a community. This community, our community. Who else needs us? Who else needs a place of solace and challenge? Who else is carrying a heavy load and needs a place both to set it down and to have it shared? Who else? Who else? And when they come seeking us, will they find a welcome or a barrier? A community of care and concern, or a culture communicating that some belong here, while others never really will? A culture rooted in a past that has not caught up to the times, captive to old and outworn attention to old and outworn issues. Or a place, a community of belonging, ever more fully determined to attend with unflinching honesty to the way some have long found belonging, while others have long experienced the barriers. The times are calling us to be a spiritual community. In light of our vision and of our mission, and in light especially of these times, what kind of community do we want to be? What kind of community do we want to be? What kind of community
do we want to become?
We all laugh, we all cry, we all feel hunger, we all feel pain, we all love, we all hate, we all love, and we all dream, we are one people, and we all breathe the same. Let's try with many languages, or prove of many hearts, fighting for peace among the land. Hey ya, Sissy Moja. Hey ya, Sissy Moja. Hey ya, Sissy Moja. We are one.
We all want, we all need, we all seek passion, we all seek joy.
We all brood,
We all brood,
we all scoff,
we all scoff,
we all fail,
we all fail
the birds that fly. We are one people, and we all breathe the same. In the darkness of the night and in the glory of the morning, we walk along the path and find our way. Hey ya, Sissy Moja. Hey ya, Sissy Moja. Hey ya, Sissy Moja. Now we stand here together and lift our hearts in song to the rhythm of this moment in our lives. Hey ya, Sissy Moja. Hey ya, Sissy Moja. Hey ya, Sissy Moja. Hey ya. We are one.
Good morning. I am Kelly Green, Membership Coordinator of UUCC. And if you are new, this might be the first place that you've ever seen me. This is our visitor table in the entranceway of our building. We are so glad that all of you are with us today. If you are new and want to learn more about us, how to get involved, or if you would like to become a member, I can help you. You can email me at kelly@uuccharlotte.org. If you are on our Facebook page, you can look for my comment, Kelly Green, and message me from there. If you are watching the live stream, you can look for the link above the box where the video is. There's a link for visitors, and you can contact me through that. I look forward to hearing from you.
Again, I'm Eve Stevens, one of the ministers of this congregation. And in addition to connecting with Kelly to learn more about us, I encourage you to subscribe to our weekly e-newsletter, Currents, for the latest on opportunities to connect with the life of this community. Jay and I have been receiving your expressions of interest in this year's core groups. Our core groups are an opportunity for our members to study the role of systemic injustice in shaping our country, past and present. Jay is taking the lead on the economic justice core group, exploring the critical role of property in creating and denying generational wealth, the long reach of slavery and ongoing questions about reparations, pay inequity, and the continuing struggle for a living wage. I'm taking the lead on the cultural justice core group. We'll be exploring sexism and patriarchy, immigration, LGBTQ+ issues, and the ways religion has been used to foster injustice in this country. In order to participate in one of these core groups, we're asking you to reflect on a series of questions that you can find in this week's Currents or in the e-blast that went out recently. Submit your answers to those questions by this Wednesday, September 16th, and we'll be in touch with more details about what you can expect as our core groups get underway in October. We hold in prayer this morning the people who are showing up in the streets of Rochester and Kenosha, Portland and DC, San Antonio and LA to challenge, among other things, the exemption legally granted to police departments to use chemical weapons on the people they serve, or to use lethal force in a variety of nonviolent circumstances with impunity. We hold in prayer the people here in our own city of Charlotte, demanding that policing transform into a just way of being in community with one another. We hold in prayer the people of California, Oregon, and Washington who have lost loved ones, who have lost homes and their hometowns, who cannot breathe safely, who cannot shelter safely as wildfires rage on. Here in our congregational community, we hold with love and in our prayers Ethan, Lisa, Amelia, and Lily Hagan as Ethan recovers from surgery at home. Those of you who awaken every day to a struggle with anxiety, depression, addiction, we hold you with love. Those of you trying to keep panic at bay as you sift through an impossible deterioration of your finances, we hold you with love. May there be some unexpected, blessed ease in your days this week.
Were we together in this space on this first Sunday after Labor Day, at this point in the service, we would hear words from our lay service leader. Ushers would come forward with these baskets. Music would begin to play, and the baskets would be passed up and down each row. It is the way, to be sure, we take a collection in our services, a way to help generate the essential financial support that we so desperately need as a congregation. But even more than that, it's a ritual. It's a tactile reminder as each of us touches the basket that life is calling on us. Every day, life is calling on us with the question, what do you have to offer? In these perilous times, let us listen deeply for that question again. What do you have to offer? We thank you for your support. We thank those of you who are making and paying on your pledges. We urge more of you to be attentive to the financial needs of our community. These are perilous times. We need, our larger community needs this community. Please support us as generously as you are able, and know that we are deeply grateful.
I invite you now into a time of meditation. Deepen your breath. Release the tension in your forehead, in your jaw. Relax your hands. Feel how the air settles on your palms. Deepen your breath. I offer you these words by Unitarian Universalist minister Ashley Oren. Feel the force of gravity pulling us all toward the same center. Feel our collective rootedness. Now hear this. You are part of a we, a great cloud of witnesses, living and dead, who have insisted that this beautiful, broken world of ours is a blessing worthy of both deep gratitude and fierce protection. Our ancestors and our descendants are beckoning us, compelling us onward toward greater connection, greater compassion, greater commitment to one another and the earth. Together, we are resilient and resourceful enough to say yes to this call, to make it our life's work, knowing that we can do no other than bind ourselves more tightly together and do the holy work of showing up again and again to be part of building the world of which we dream but have not yet seen. Blessed be. Amen.
Words from our colleague, Kimberly Quinn Johnson. We are the ones we have been waiting for.
We are not perfect, but we are perfectly fitted for this day.
We are not without fault, but we can be honest to face our past as we chart a new future.
We are the ones we have been waiting for.
May we be bold and courageous to chart the new future.
May we have faith in a future that is not known.
We are the ones we have been waiting for. Go with courage until we meet again.